As the Princess of Wales spends time out and about with her family, will we see her return to royal duties soon? And who will appear alongside King Charles on the balcony of Buckingham Palace for Trooping the Colour? Did Meghan's outfits during her Nigeria tour prompt terse words about nakedness from the country's First Lady? Plus, should the young royals be forced to take part in military service? We've got another packed show for you today. Welcome to Palace Confidential. I'm Jo Elvin, and here to discuss another extraordinary few days is the Daily Mail's editor-at-large Richard Kay, the Mail on Sunday's editor-at-large Charlotte Griffiths, and royal correspondent and broadcaster Victoria Murphy. What a glittering titled array we have today. Thanks for joining us. Now, a reminder to like, and if you don't already, please do subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals channel, and that way you will never miss an update from us. Okay, so let's kick things off with the Princess of Wales now. And the palace has shared some details of get well messages that Catherine has received from the public. Victoria, the palace has been absolutely inundated, hasn't it? Unsurprisingly, I suppose.
Well, yes, unsurprisingly. And we should say this is Rebecca English's story, so we should give her credit in her absence.
Although, you know, we're cross with her for daring to take a holiday.
Right, well, quite. Yeah. Well, anyway, she did write a story saying that the palace had been inundated with cards and gifts and messages of well wishes for the Princess of Wales. Totally unsurprising. These go to the department of the Royal Household who deals with correspondence, and they will eventually get round to giving everyone the reply that they deserve. But
gosh, do we have an idea of how many pieces of correspondence they have?
They do get a lot of correspondence on a regular basis. Obviously it spikes when there's big events happening of any nature, and this is exactly the kind of thing that you would expect them to get a lot of people writing in for. Yeah. And they do try and reply to everyone in time. It can sometimes take a long time, sometimes months, before people get that response. But I mean, it's not surprising. And you know, we're seeing now the polling is showing that she is the most popular royal. YouGov's favourability tracker, that's what it shows at the moment. It was Queen Elizabeth, and now Princess of Wales is in that top spot. And I think it just really shows, you know, what a sort of pivotal figure she remains, even though we haven't seen her for such a long time, even though she's been absent from public life.
Well, indeed, Charlotte, she really is so much missed, isn't she? And people are inevitably asking, where is Catherine? Do you think the palace should be more forthcoming with updates?
I actually don't think so. I think there's a time in anyone's life when they need privacy, and obviously when you're very ill with cancer, it's it.
Yeah.
And this is a woman who stood on the steps of the Lindo wing just after giving birth, you know, to show us her baby. She's
I can't imagine being up for that, can you?
No, I would never do that in a million years. She's so dutiful. Yeah. And, you know, and she came out and did this video, as we all know, a couple of months ago, saying she had cancer. I mean, that seemed like enough to me. And the whole point of doing the video was to get us to stop asking where she is. We know where she is. She's just had a lovely half time with her family. She's recovering from cancer, and she may never ever be out of the spotlight again for the rest of her life, because she's going to be famous for the rest of her life. So let's just give her some space to rest.
It's a fine line, I think, isn't it, between concern and nosiness, because I think particularly when it's something as dramatic as cancer, people want to know how she is.
Yeah, people want to know exactly how she's getting on with her progress, but who knows, maybe she isn't doing that well at the moment, or maybe she's only just doing well. It's not an area, I think, that she probably wants to share minute by minute. She probably wants to make a big reveal, actually. She probably wants to be like, I'm back. You know, when she is feeling tip-top, when she's looking her best, she might just want to just do the big reveal.
Well, we have seen her out and about, haven't we, Richard, with her family, but do you have any intel on when she might return to public royal engagements?
There are reports that she's been seen out and about. I don't think we've ever actually seen her out and about anywhere, but I did hear that she'd been seen by walkers in Windsor Great Park, which sounds par for the course. She'd want to do as much exercise as she's able to do. But no, I don't think we know really when she's likely to come out. I think expectations have been pushed back a little. We had hoped that she might be ready to resume some form of limited engagement with family work by late spring, but I think that's looking unlikely now.
Right.
So I suspect it's going to be much later in the year.
Now, Victoria, the royal family, we touched on this last week, has cancelled many of its future engagements now because of Britain's July general election, but some are still going ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really unusual situation because we've not had a general election in July since 1945, and June is actually a really busy month for the royal family. It's a month when they're usually very visible, and particularly this June we've got the D-Day commemorations, and we also had in the diary a state visit that was earmarked for the end of June, and there's still a question mark over that. There's not been any information. I checked again this morning as to whether or not that's definitely going ahead. So it makes sense, of course, that the royal family do modify their engagements around an election because, you know, the king, politically neutral, can't be seen to be, he needs to keep a distance while people are campaigning, can't be seen to be positively or negatively influencing any of those campaigns. But it is, you know, he'd just come back to work all guns blazing after having taken time off, and June is a month when I think we will really feel any modifications to the timetable, in contrast to, for example, when we've had general elections in May and Queen Elizabeth often would spend Easter away out of the spotlight anyway. So I think we will notice it, but things still going ahead, the D-Day commemorations, and also their presence at the D-Day commemorations, the royal family's presence, and also trooping the colour, we now know is definitely going ahead.
So, Charlotte, I believe that some Londoners might be treated to a bit of a pre-show of trooping the colour today.
Yeah, there's a rehearsal on today, and it's trooping the colour, but they wear khaki today.
So is it trooping the khaki?
Trooping the khaki, yeah, let's call it that.
Is it?
I don't
It's a
think
genuine
actually,
question from this.
No, I don't think it is. It's a
uneducated
rehearsal.
Aussie. Yeah.
It's a rehearsal where they wear khaki. And it's this moment that they've decided to release the information that Kate definitely won't be there, which we sort of knew, but now we know for sure she won't be there. But Charles and Camilla will be there. He won't be on horseback, he's going to be in a carriage for trooping the colour when it comes.
Makes sense.
And he's not at the rehearsal today as far as I'm aware. But yeah, so there's a little bit more information coming out about the event.
Now, Richard, obviously with trooping the colour in particular, there'll be one of those famous balcony scenes.
We hope.
Well, I was going to ask you, do you think that there'll be a lot of speculation about who will be on that balcony?
Well, I think there will. I mean, we've been led to believe that he only wants to showcase working royals. We know what that means, but I think they're going to be a bit short on the glamour quota. We're pretty certain Kate won't be there. So who might step into the breach? And it's quite possible that Prince Andrew's daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, might be there. The Duchess of Edinburgh's children, Prince Edward's kids, they could be on the balcony for a rare appearance. I mean, they'll do something, I'm sure, to sort of fill it out. But what I don't think will be a return to what it was under Queen Elizabeth, say, 20 years ago, when the entire extended family squeezed on.
Charlotte, though, dare I say it, Meghan and Harry would provide some of that glamour factor on the balcony, possibly not Prince Andrew. Do you think any of them will be invited?
I don't think Harry and Meghan are going to be invited on the balcony. But
at least if you invite them, they can't make a big song and dance about not being invited.
Yes, I mean, it would actually, you're right, it'd be actually quite a good move for Charles to invite them on. Then they'd feel obliged to say no because they're not working royals, and then, you know, they wouldn't be able to say, I was snubbed by my father and why can't I stand next to my brother on the balcony? But you're right about the glamour thing. You know, I did like the moment that Meghan did go on the balcony. Everyone loves staring at that balcony, don't they? And seeing who's talking to who. And I love that moment when the Queen told off Prince William for bending down once. So without lots and lots of royals on the balcony, there's less sense of drama, I suppose. But there was in the Mail the other day that picture of the balcony 10 years ago, and it's such a big difference. There were hundreds of them on there. It kind of feels insane in retrospect. You know, the family was way too big, and perhaps they were right to slim it down.
Well, we've kind of gone from one extreme to the other, though, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that now they're drafting in Beatrice and Eugenie potentially to bring that glamour. Yeah. Well,
we know that Richard Eden will be fans of that move if that happens. He is a fan of the princesses. But Victoria, it does expose the vulnerability, doesn't it, of the so-called current slimmed-down monarchy?
Yeah, I mean, if there's only working royals on the balcony and the Princess of Wales isn't there, that will feel like a big hole when there's fewer people up there anyway. I mean, I think it has been really difficult for them during this time, you know, obviously on a personal level as family with the illnesses, but professionally not being able to be as visible. But I think when we talk about sort of the royal family and vulnerability, I think they're really vulnerable when we see those polls start to show that the public is not engaged, the public is turning away from them, is not invested, is not supportive, and that nothing like that has shown up in the past few weeks or months. If anything, you know, this kind of sense of really kind of getting behind the royals, really people really invested in their recovery is really what's come through over the past few weeks and months. So I certainly think that this sort of temporary slimmed downness for the reasons that it's happening isn't making them vulnerable at all. And looking to the long term as well, somebody, Joe Little from Majesty Magazine, I should give him the credit, did point out to me that in 1952, when Queen Elizabeth first came to the throne, Princess Alexandra started doing public engagements at a very young age because it was perceived that that was necessary. And then the Queen went on to have 4 children. Obviously, there was lots of people to be working royals, and William and Kate have had 3 children. So in the long term, there are options for having more working royals if that's the decision that's made.
We'll be speaking about those younger royals a bit later on. But first, if you enjoy this programme, and we know that a lot of you do, thank you for tuning in every week, you might enjoy another show from the Mail. From our very own Richard Eden, the diary editor of the Mail, is hosting his own show. It's called Eden's Royals, and here he is to tell us all about it.
We know how much you love Palace Confidential, and we want to bring you even more great royal programmes. That's why I've recorded the pilot episode of a new show. On Eden's Royals, I will go in depth on the big royal stories and questions that fascinate us all. Watch Eden's Royals on the Daily Mail YouTube channel from Monday.
Right, so much more to come, including the First Lady of Nigeria's comments following Harry and Meghan's tour. But first, we had nearly 5,000 comments on last week's show. Thank you so much to all of you for writing in. Please do keep them coming. We love to read them. Now, plenty of you had a lot to say about new details of Prince Harry's brief visit to the UK. Rocking Reader says, I'm so glad King Charles offered Harry a place to stay. It does show he does care about his son. I agree with Rebecca that saying his father didn't have time for him backfired. I've always believed the Sussexes are more to blame for the royal rift than the royal family. Now here's more proof. Okay then. Susan says the comment by Richard Eden that the King could pop over to see Harry in St James's Palace on notice is exactly why Harry doesn't want to stay there. Harry wants to make a song and dance about arriving to see the King. He isn't interested in anything low-key. While AC Ellis says maybe the King should offer Harry a stay in the Tower of London next time he's in the country. Oh dear, oh dear. Now Anna says Prince Harry acts like he's the only spare to ever exist. Princess Anne started as the spare and then got knocked down by her brothers. We don't hear her complaining. Too true, always too true. Well, let's stick with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle now. Victoria, a new row has erupted over Harry's US visa.
Well, the same row, just ongoing.
Oh, but we'll talk about it again. Yeah.
Just to recap if people haven't been up to date, but this story about whether or not the details of Prince Harry's visa will be made public. The Heritage Foundation in the US wants that to be the case. They've put in freedom of information requests to try and get the Department of Homeland Security to release details of his visa in order to establish whether or not he admitted to previous drug taking in his application. The suggestion being that that in itself wouldn't necessarily be a problem, but not disclosing it might be. And so they feel that the American public has the right to know what's happened with his visa application. Department of Homeland Security pushing back against that. It's now sitting with a judge who will make a decision on whether this is made public. But what's come to light in the past few days was information from court documents about the Department of Homeland Security pushing back against this and saying that this was private, and also that there might be a stigma attached to this information being released, which is slightly confusing. I'm not sure exactly what that
what
means.
Does that mean? Do we
exactly,
know?
Yeah. There's a lot of question marks over where this could go, because firstly, will the information be released? What does the information show? And then what happens after that, if anything? And of course, it could depend on the administration, because there's an election coming up in the US. And so it could sort of come to nothing, or it could become quite problematic for Harry. I think there's a lot of different directions this could go in.
Would there be any argument over releasing this information were he not a royal public figure?
Well, I think the question has come up because he's put out in Spare his information about his previous drug taking. I suppose if he was a completely private individual, he wouldn't have published a really best-selling autobiography with information in it that's then been taken by this organisation and raising this question about his application.
Watch this space. Another intriguing development this week, Charlotte, Nigeria's First Lady, Oloremi Tinubu. Charlotte says she's made some pointed comments about US influences following Harry and Meghan's recent visit.
Yeah, so it hasn't been long since the recent visit, and then she's stood up on a podium and she's made two comments. One about nakedness coming over from Hollywood and sort of Hollywood actresses needing to be naked. And the other comment she made was about not knowing who you are. She said something along the lines of, you know, these actresses in Hollywood, they don't know who they are. We're Nigerian women, we know who we are. And I just felt like those two, and I think a lot of the world felt like those two comments were maybe perhaps pointed at Meghan, because after all, Meghan wore really skimpy clothes while she was in Nigeria.
Did she? Were they really skimpy?
Well, she wore a backless gown to go to a school, and she wore this very sexy, I thought, black and white ball gown with a big slit up the side and some holes around the edge, thin straps, low cut. I just thought,
for a country,
for a country, here am I in my sort of very buttoned up shirt, but for a country that's more or less 50-50 Muslim and Christian, you know, slightly more Muslim, and, you know, the First Lady herself covers up very much and was wearing a head covering and her shoulders were covered. I think that's the point she was making, is that you don't have to be naked to make an impact.
But is this a bit of a stretch to call this a swipe at Meghan?
I think it is, because Meghan was wearing a lot of Nigerian designed outfits, and they were taken to their heart. I know it was a very controlled tour. We've talked about it here before, but there was something about the connection that she had with Nigeria, and particularly with the Nigerian feminine population. I mean, she identifies. Let's face it. She's publicly proud of this 43% Nigerian blood she has, or heritage that she has. I'm not sure that it was a direct dig at Meghan.
But on that note, the Nigerian First Lady said these Hollywood actresses don't know who they are or where they come from. I thought that was quite an interesting point. I thought that was such an unusual thing to say.
But what even prompted this conversation? I don't really get it.
Yeah, she was on stage giving a talk.
Yeah, I guess, you know. Well, there was a lot of nakedness at the Met Gala, but that's a long way from Nigeria.
Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame. I mean, this was a pseudo-royal tour, and on a real royal tour, Meghan would have had to worn, you know, jackets and blazers and things like that, like royals do. And in fact, that might have been that might have been the point, because we know that Meghan uses how she dresses now, that she's no longer a working royal, to make a point about how constrained she was before, and that's why she wears a lot of colour now, because she's spoken a lot about how she had to wear beige before. And we know that she found it very constraining that she was told how to dress while she was a working member of the royal family.
Okay, well, let's. You know, I'm sure the viewers will let us know their thoughts on all of that. But Richard, to another awkward situation now. The royal family has deleted from their website a statement by Prince Harry, which apparently made King Charles a bit upset.
Yeah, this was the famous statement that Harry put out soon after he began dating Meghan Markle, and it was a very loaded statement. We probably can all remember it.
Yeah.
He accused sections of the media of employing racist tropes to discuss her and her heritage and her background. And it was an extraordinary statement because it did two things. It upset both Prince Charles, as he then was, and Prince William, because William never thought Harry should admit anything about a relationship, because it sort of firmly established that Meghan and Harry, were dating. And for Charles, of course, he was so upset because he was midway through a tour of the United Arab Emirates, and there was this huge distraction generated by Harry's statement, which sort of commandeered all the attention which might otherwise have been focused on the prince. So he was cross about that, and also I think Charles would have wanted time to have gone through this statement and might have said to his son, don't put it out.
It was rather incendiary, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, but I didn't realise that something like that was newsworthy at the time would stay on there.
Perhaps, no, I wasn't really aware of it either, but they had an update, as I understand it, of the Buckingham Palace website in terms of Harry's biography, and they do constantly update these biographies, or they do regularly update them. And this was done, I think, at the back end of last year, but it's only just someone's only just picked up on it. Was it deliberately taken off? I'm told not. The palace insists it was just a refresh, and some things do drop off. Well, the internet is a mysterious tool, as we know, but it is all rather odd that that particular thing should vanish.
Indeed. Now, away from Harry and Meghan, there's been talk this week about national service possibly returning to the UK, statements by our current Prime Minister talking about the future. In such a scenario, would the young royals have to do this, or would they be exempt from national service?
They wouldn't be exempt, I don't think. And in fact,
How
that's
do we know?
Well, this whole thing is a bit of a hypothetical debate. But I don't think they would, because the royal family have a long-standing policy of being down to earth and doing as the general population do. And I think they'd see us as a rite of passage for their young royals. And I think the young royals would want to do it, actually. And we'd love to see them. I'd love to see Princess Charlotte one day when she's 18 doing some military service or volunteering at an NHS ward. I think it'd be great. I would. I think it'd be really nice. It'd be a really nice way to introduce the young royals into working royal life.
Are you looking forward to your children doing national service?
Yeah, I would like my kids to volunteer at the NHS or something like that.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Richard,
it doesn't have to be the army.
Exactly, that's very true. Now, Richard, the royal family do have a rich military history, though, don't they?
They do. I mean, so we can confidently expect that George and Louis at some stage will do some form of military service. Prince William did, Prince Harry did, and of course the King did. And I think it's a tradition that will continue. So if you're asking whether they could be exempt because they're going to go into the military, well, that might be an exclusion for them. But I agree with Charlotte. I think they'd have to do it if it was a national scheme, and B, it would be good for them, good for their image, and good for the country.
Indeed. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been said, I do this long association between the royal family and the military, and members of the royal family serving in the military when it's not compulsory. It's just what they choose to do, what's the convention. They couldn't be seen to be exempt from something anyway that the public was being asked to do. I mean, the monarchy now today, it's really important that they remain relatable and have that connection and that down-to-earth feeling, and we feel as the public that they are in things with us, and doing anything that was required of other people would be an important part of that.
We'd have a field day if they exempted themselves, wouldn't we?
Well, yeah, you're probably quite right about that, indeed. Well, another thing that the royal family is known for being big fans of is horse racing, and with Epsom Derby just around the corner, we thought we'd bring you some of our favourite royal moments from that gathering over the years. Hope you enjoyed that and the show. Just time to say thanks to Richard, Charlotte and Victoria, and to you for watching. We will see you next time on Palace Confidential. Bye-bye.